Hi everybody, welcome back to the journey of my YouTube channel and welcome to my first video where I'm looking ahead at my reading for 2023. So I'm kicking off my reading for the year by looking forward to the 10 books as it was going to be. It turned into the 15 books that I'm most excited to read in 2023 because I could not narrow it down to 10. So I will just go quickly through each one of these books so that this video doesn't take forever. At least I hope I'll move pretty quickly through them. The one thing is that since these are books that I'm planning to read throughout the year, I don't have many of them yet at all, as in I have exactly one, but I have some other books that I thought it would be fun to hold up. It's more fun than just putting a picture up on the screen. So I picked some books that I thought were kind of similar for some reason, at least. So you can let me know if you think that these books are similar enough to be held up in place of the books that I'm talking about here. So also, I'm not talking about these books in order of how much I'm excited to read them because that would be kind of impossible to categorize. I'm talking about them mostly just in order of when I'm planning on reading them this year. But I did want to start out with a couple that I don't think I'll be reading soon, but I'm excited about, so I just wanted to start out by talking about them. And the first one is The Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser, which I am super hyped about right now. I just backed the Kickstarter for that, which by the time that you're watching will probably have a whole lot of backing behind it because it has already absolutely blown its goal out of the water. So The Fairy Queen is an epic fantasy poem from 1590 and it is written in very archaic language. But this Kickstarter is for a project that is updating The Fairy Queen into prose, and it's prose that is much more accessible to modern readers, and it's also going to have a ton of illustrations from Justin Gerard, who is my favorite illustrator of all time. His work is amazing, so I am very excited for that project. I'm not sure what the timeline is for actually getting the books out to us, but I will be starting to read that on the day that it arrives at my house, and I really can't wait for that. So I'm very excited about this old book that is now becoming a new book, and I'm really excited to rediscover a story that's largely been forgotten for the last couple of hundred years probably, but it's inspired people like C.S. Lewis and a lot of other writers like George MacDonald. So I'm very excited to see what impact that has on the writing of the next generation. And then kind of similarly, I'm also excited for The Lost Tales of Sir Galahad, which is a collection of short stories by a whole bunch of different authors in several different styles that talk about a part in the King Arthur legends where Sir Galahad went off and had all kinds of different adventures, but according to the old legends, nobody knows what those adventures were, but a team of authors and really good artist Ned Bustard have teamed up to finally show us what those adventures were. They have dubbed themselves as researchers who have uncovered all this new archaeological evidence about what Sir Galahad was really doing. And they're a bunch of different short stories, but in spite of all their differences in different authors, they're actually connected into one overarching narrative still. There is still a progression throughout the book. So I'm just really excited for that. It comes in this really nice hardcover that I'm excited about. So for both of these projects, I found out about them through the Rabbit Room, which is a really neat community of artists, writers, painters, potters, cooks, musicians, all kinds of art work together in the Rabbit Room, and they create and promote a lot of really neat art in a community that I appreciate a lot. So I'll give a link to them and you can find out about more projects like these if that sounds interesting to you. So getting now to the first book that I'm actually planning to read this year that I am most excited about is Rhythm of War. I don't think much needs to be said about this one. It's the next Stormlight book, and I've read the first three, and it's been a while since I read Oathbringer, so I'm definitely looking forward to finding out what happens next in the series, and hopefully remembering everything that happens in Rhythm of War until book 5 comes out. So I'm sure that will get me really excited for the future of Stormlight to read this. Number 4, The Sword in the Stone by T.H. White, which is the beginning of the Once and Future King books, which are some of the most influential and widely recognized Arthurian tales from the 20th century. So I'm really excited for that. I got into King Arthur just last year, really. You might remember that I mentioned reading a book of Arthurian legends by Thomas Mallory, and I avoid saying the title because I don't want to butcher the French. But I found that kind of a lot disturbing actually, but also pretty intriguing. And then I watched all of BBC Merlin last year, and then I really thought that the Arthur stories were cool. So I'm very excited to learn more about that and to hear another version of the legends. And I am really interested in reading some more versions of the legends too. I've gotten quite curious about it. Number 5 is Jack Zulu and the Waylander's Key by S.D. Smith and J.C. Smith. So S.D. Smith wrote the Green Ember series, which is one of my favorite middle grade series, and then he and his son have now written a new book that just came out a few months ago. So I can't believe I haven't read it yet, honestly. I thought I would read it the day that it came out, and then I was just busy and I haven't gotten around to it yet. So I'm really excited to read that over the course of this year. It sounds very different from the Green Ember. Like, it has human characters and they're not rabbits, so that will be a big change. But it sounds like S.D. Smith has probably done a really, really good job with this new book too. So I'm very much looking forward to trying that out. 6 would be Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio, I think is how you say his name. It's such a cool name. I'm very jealous. But anyway, I heard about this book through BookTube. I've heard a lot of booktubers talk about it, and I looked up the plot summary and it sounds really, really cool. So I'm looking forward to read that one. I'm hoping for some space epicness and lots of adventure, hopefully some like politics, political intrigue, and maybe some mystery. And I'm hoping for a lot of like big space opera action, but also in kind of an epic fantasy sort of tone. That's the idea that I'm getting from what I've heard about it. So that's what I'm hoping it is, and I am looking forward to finding out. 7 is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. So I saw the Studio Ghibli movie of this last year, and I am very curious to see how different the book is, and probably rewatch the movie and compare the two. It just seems like a really fun, whimsical story with an interesting character arc, and it does some unusual things. Like, it uses some fantasy tropes. In some ways it feels like a typical middle grade fantasy, but then some of the things that it does are just really creative and original. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out in the book versus the movie, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. A nice, fairly light read, I think, since quite a few of these books that I'm mentioning are fairly long, fairly heavy. I think it'll be nice to have something that's a little bit shorter and lighter to read. Next is The Wheel of Time, and I guess I'll just hold up a Brandon Sanderson book because he finished the Wheel of Time series, but starting with the Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. And I am excited to get started on another really big classic fantasy story. I'm a little intimidated that I will get through many, many hours of reading and then be like, okay, that series wasn't quite as satisfying as I hoped that it would be. So I'm a little hesitant about the time investment of the whole series, but I definitely want to at least give the first book a try and see if I'm feeling invested in the characters and in the plot and in the world and everything. And if I am, I'm sure that I will want to keep going. So if you guys have read The Wheel of Time, please let me know. Is it worth it? Is it worth all the time investment? I don't know, but I am committed to giving it a try. 9 is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong, which is another one that I've been hearing about quite a bit on BookTube. I actually originally just came across it on Amazon and read the Amazon sample, and I was kind of like, wow, I thought this was just some random self-published book I stumbled across. Why is the writing this good? So I know extremely little about the plot of that one. I only know about it what I remember from the Amazon sample, but I know that a lot of people here on BookTube have enjoyed it, and I haven't read a whole lot of Asian-inspired fantasy, so I am excited for that aspect of it, and I think it sounds like it's well written and unique for a fantasy story. And yeah, that's definitely one that I am looking forward to giving a try. 10 is The Epic of Gilgamesh, which I've been meaning to read in its entirety for quite a while. I read an excerpt in school, but it's one of the oldest pieces of fiction that we have. I think it is safe to say, and I've been trying to make my way through some of the oldest pieces of fiction that we have. Therefore, the Iliad. This is another one that I'm actually looking forward to rereading this year, but I have not read the whole Epic of Gilgamesh before, and I really want to because it's so very old, and I think it will have some interesting insights on ancient culture, and I think that'll be an interesting mythology to explore. 11 is Everything Sad is Untrue by Daniel Nayeri, which if I understand right, is somewhat autobiographical about the author's childhood, but also fictionalized. So it's about moving from the Middle East to America and about growing up. And again, I've just heard a lot of people say that it's really good and it sounds really good. It sounds like a very cool read and unique, not like what I usually read. I don't read a lot of memoirs or even a lot of fiction that is autobiographically inspired, and I don't read a whole lot of immigrant stories, so I'm excited to add that into my reading list for the year. 12 is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which just looks super fun. I mean, maybe some of the covers are misleading and maybe it's more intense than it looks, but the idea that I'm getting from the covers is just that this is a really fun classic fantasy that's going to have in it a bunch of the things that I've always liked about fantasy. And I don't even know more about it than that, but I'm looking forward to reading it just to see if it's a series that I'll want to get into and read the whole series. I love just getting immersed in a fantasy series. 13, All Systems Red by Martha Wells, who happens to have the same last name as this science fiction author. And I am really curious to read some Murderbot Diaries because, once again, I've heard lots of people say that it's good, and I have been working my way through science fiction classics over the last couple of years, and then also trying to get to some of the best modern sci-fi classics, and it sounds like All Systems Red is one of those for sure. So based on the title and the descriptions that I've seen, I'm guessing that there's a little bit of sarcasm, dark humor, robot personality. So we'll see. We'll see if I'm right about that. Okay, I now have a huge tottering stack of books that I've set down next to me, and it's a little bit wobbly, and so we'll see if that can continue to stand. We're almost done here. I just have a couple more books to mention, and then I can put my books away, hopefully before they all crash to the ground. But 14 is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, or Gaiman, I never know. I don't remember what is the correct way to pronounce his name. But I really don't know much about Norse mythology, and I have never read anything by Neil Gaiman, which both seem like kind of missed opportunities, and I figure I can sort of kill two birds with one stone there. Maybe it'll be a little bit of an odd introduction to Neil Gaiman since it's stories that he's retelling rather than making up on his own, so we'll see how that goes, but I am curious to learn more about that. I know that's another thing that's inspired writers like Tolkien and Lewis and other classic fantasy writers is Norse mythology. So yeah, I'm interested to get to kind of the source of a lot of those myths and images and concepts that show up in more familiar fantasy books. And finally, the 15th book that I am most excited to read this year is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, which has been called potentially the first science fiction book. It at least was a huge influence on modern sci-fi as we know it, and on the rest of classic sci-fi. And it sounds really interesting, not just because of the sci-fi elements, but because of the character and theme elements. So I'm really curious how that all goes together. I think it's a classic for a reason. And last year I read Dracula and was a huge fan of it, and so I'm kind of hoping to replicate that type of experience with Frankenstein. I'm planning to read it in October. It's sort of my Halloween read, I guess. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, even though it'll probably be quite some time before I actually read it. My book stack is currently still standing. Hopefully it'll hold out for just another minute. But anyway, let me know what books you're most excited to read this year, or just creative projects that you're excited about in general. I would love to hear about that, so let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more of my videos in this new year of 2023. And until I make some more, I will see you next time. Thanks for journeying with me. Bye.